The caregiver sang softly to the old man, unaware his millionaire son was watching and changed her life. The afternoon sun streamed through the wide windows of Harmony Care Center, casting gentle patterns of light and shadow across the polished floors of the memory care wing. It was the kind of peaceful autumn day that seemed designed for quiet reflection, when the changing leaves outside painted the world in shades of gold, an amber that spoke of life's beautiful transitions. In room 237, 73-year-old Harold Whitman sat propped up in his hospital bed, his white hair carefully combed, and his light blue button-down shirt pressed with the same attention to detail that had characterized his entire life. His mustache, which he had worn with pride for over 40 years, was neatly trimmed, and his weathered hands rested quietly on the soft cotton blanket that covered his legs. Harold's eyes, though clouded by the advancing fog of Alzheimer's disease, still held moments of clarity that reminded anyone who took the time to look closely that a brilliant mind lived within his failing memory. He had been a professor of literature at the State University for 35 years, inspiring countless students with his passion for poetry and his belief that words could heal the human heart. Now, words often escaped him, floating just beyond his reach like leaves caught in an autumn breeze. The disease had stolen many things from Harold. It had taken his ability to remember his late wife's face clearly, though he still spoke her name, Eleanor, with reverence and love. It had robbed him of the satisfaction of completing crossword puzzles that had once been his morning ritual. It had even claimed his independence, requiring him to live in this well-appointed facility where dedicated professionals could ensure his safety and comfort. But Alzheimer's had not touched Harold's appreciation for music, particularly the old songs that seemed to awaken something deep within his mind that remained untouched by confusion and loss. When familiar melodies filled the air, Harold's eyes would brighten, his posture would straighten, and for precious moments, he would return to himself in ways that amazed his caregivers and brought both joy and heartbreak to those who loved him. The person who understood this about Harold better than anyone was 27-year-old Catherine Moore, the day shift nurse who had been caring for him for the past 8 months. Catherine's blonde hair was always pulled back in a neat ponytail that revealed the gentle lines of her face and the compassionate blue eyes that seemed to see straight into the hearts of her patients. Her blue scrubs, though practical and professional, couldn't disguise the natural grace with which she moved through her duties, treating each person in her care with dignity and respect. Catherine had been drawn to geriatric nursing, not by accident, but by a deep understanding of the value and wisdom that resided in elderly minds, even those affected by dementia and memory loss. Her grandmother, who had raised her after her parents' death in a car accident when Catherine was 12, had taught her that aging was not a defeat, but a privilege denied to many, and that every elderly person carried within them a lifetime of stories, loves, losses, and dreams that deserved to be honored. Every wrinkle tells a story, sweetheart, her grandmother used to say as she brushed Catherine's hair each night. Every gray hair represents a challenge overcome, a lesson learned, a moment of joy or sorrow that made that person who they are. Our job isn't to see the failing body, but to honor the beautiful soul that lived a full life within it. These words had shaped Catherine's approach to nursing, inspiring her to see beyond symptoms and medical conditions to the human beings who trusted her with their most vulnerable moments. She had learned that healing often came, not through medications and procedures alone, but through the simple act of recognizing each patient's inherent worth and treating them with the love and respect they deserved. This philosophy was particularly evident in Catherine's relationship with Harold. While other staff members focused primarily on his medical needs and safety requirements. Catherine had taken the time to learn about who Harold had been before Alzheimer's had begun to claim his memories. She had spoken with his son during visiting hours, gathering stories about Harold's love of literature, his devotion to his late wife Eleanor, and his lifelong passion for the songs of the 1940s and 1950s. Armed with this knowledge, Catherine had begun incorporating music into Harold's daily routine. She would hum softly while helping him with his meals, sing gentle lullabies when he became agitated or confused, and share stories about the historical context of his favorite songs. These musical interludes had become the highlight of Harold's days, bringing moments of peace and clarity that were precious beyond measure. On this particular afternoon, Catherine was preparing to help Harold with his afternoon medications when she noticed that he seemed more restless than usual. He was shifting uncomfortably in his bed, his eyes darting around the room, with the kind of confusion that often preceded episodes of agitation or distress. His hands were picking at the blanket, a nervous habit that indicated his mind was searching for something it could not quite grasp. "Mr. Whitman," Catherine said gently, approaching his bedside with the calm presence that had become her trademark. "How are you feeling this afternoon? You seem a little unsettled." Harold looked up at her with eyes that reflected both recognition and confusion. "The music," he said in a voice that was stronger than usual. "I keep hearing music, but I can't remember the words." Catherine's heart went out to him, understanding that his agitation stemmed from the frustration of having a melody stuck in his mind without being able to complete it. This was a common experience for patients with dementia, where fragments of memories would surface without context, creating a sense of unfinished business that could be deeply distressing. "What kind of music, Mr. Whitman?" Catherine asked, settling into the chair beside his bed. "Can you hum it for me?" Harold's brow furrowed with concentration as he tried to capture the elusive melody. After a moment, he began to hum a few bars of what Catherine recognized as "The Way You Look Tonight," the classic Jerome Kern song that had been popular during Harold's youth. His humming was halting and uncertain, but the melody was unmistakable. "That's a beautiful song," Catherine said with a warm smile. "It's the way you look tonight. Would you like me to sing it with you?" Harold's face lit up with an expression of relief and anticipation.
"Yes,"
he said eagerly. "Eleanor loved that song. We danced to it at our wedding." Catherine took Harold's hand in hers, a gesture that had become natural and comforting for both of them. In her clear, melodious voice, she began to sing the timeless lyrics that spoke of love and devotion, of seeing beauty in another person that transcended time and circumstance. "Someday, when I'm awfully low, when the world is cold, I will feel a glow just thinking of you, and the way you look tonight, oh." As Catherine sang, something remarkable happened. Harold's restlessness disappeared completely, replaced by a peaceful expression that made him look years younger. His breathing became deeper and more relaxed, and his eyes focused on Catherine's face with the kind of attention that indicated he was fully present in the moment. When Catherine reached the chorus, Harold joined in with surprising clarity, his voice harmonizing with hers in a way that spoke of years of musical experience. For those few minutes, the years seemed to fall away, and Harold was once again the young man who had danced with his beloved Eleanor to this very song more than 50 years ago. Standing unnoticed in the doorway was someone who had not expected to witness such a tender scene. Thomas Whitman, Harold's 35-year-old son, had arrived for his weekly visit, carrying the weight of guilt and sorrow that had become his constant companions since his father's diagnosis. Thomas's dark hair was impeccably styled, and his navy blue business suit spoke of success in the corporate world. but his eyes held the pain of a man watching his hero slowly disappear. Thomas had built a successful investment, firm through long hours and ruthless determination, driven by a desire to make his father proud of the man he had become. But success had come at a cost, requiring him to prioritize business over relationships, efficiency over emotional connection. He visited his father dutifully every week, but these visits had become increasingly difficult as Harold's condition worsened and moments of recognition became rarer. Today, Thomas had arrived dreading another stilted conversation with a man who might not remember his name. Another hour spent trying to connect with someone who seemed to exist behind an impenetrable wall of confusion and loss. He had prepared himself for the usual routine of one-sided conversation and polite responses from nursing staff who treated his father with professional competence, but little warmth. Instead, he found himself witnessing something he had not expected to see. His father singing with genuine joy, his face animated with an expression of contentment that Thomas had not seen in months. The young nurse, holding his father's hand, was treating Harold not like a patient to be managed, but like a cherished friend, whose company she genuinely enjoyed. As Catherine and Harold finished their duet, Thomas remained in the doorway, afraid that entering the room might break the spell that had transformed his father from a confused elderly man into someone who seemed fully alive and present. He watched as Catherine gently adjusted Harold's pillows, her movements efficient but tender, her attention focused entirely on his comfort and well-being. "That was beautiful, Mr. Whitman," Catherine said, her voice filled with genuine admiration. "You have a wonderful voice. I bet you and Eleanor made quite a pair on the dance floor." Harold's smile was radiant. "She was the most beautiful woman in the world," he said with perfect clarity. "Still is, in my dreams." Catherine's eyes glistened, with unshed tears at the poignancy of his words. "She sounds like someone very special. Would you like to tell me more about her?" "She had golden hair," Harold said, his voice growing softer as he reached back into memories that remained vivid despite the disease that clouded so much of his thinking. "And she laughed like music. Real music, not just sound. When she laughed, it made everything better." Thomas felt his throat tighten with emotion as he listened to his father speak about his mother with such love and clarity. Eleanor had died 10 years ago, after a brief battle with cancer that had left Harold devastated and struggling to find meaning in a world without his beloved companion. The onset of Alzheimer's had been particularly cruel because it had begun to steal even the precious memories of their life together. "She sounds wonderful," Catherine said gently. "I think she would be happy knowing that her favorite song still brings you comfort." "Do you think so?" Harold asked with the innocent hope of a child seeking reassurance. "I know so," Catherine replied with complete conviction. "Love like that doesn't end when someone dies. It just changes form. Every time you remember her smile or hear that song, she's right there with you." Harold nodded slowly, his eyes reflecting a peace that had been absent for weeks. "Sometimes I forget things," he admitted with the matter-of-fact acceptance that characterized his better moments. "But I never forget how much I loved her." "And you never will," Catherine assured him. "That kind of love lives in a part of your heart that nothing can touch. It's stronger than any confusion or forgetfulness." Thomas wiped his eyes, overwhelmed by the depth of compassion this young nurse was showing his father. He had grown accustomed to healthcare workers who performed their duties competently, but maintained professional distance, treating dementia patients as medical conditions rather than as whole human beings with rich histories and deep emotions. Watching Catherine interact with Harold, Thomas saw something he had forgotten was possible. Someone treating his father not as a burden or a tragic case, but as a person worthy of love, respect, and genuine friendship. Her kindness was transforming, not just Harold's afternoon, but Thomas's understanding of what caring for someone really meant. "Catherine," Harold said suddenly, using her name with surprising clarity, "would you sing another song? Something for Eleanor?" "Of course, Mr. Whitman," Catherine replied without hesitation. "What would you like to hear?" Harold thought for a moment, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Moon River," he said finally. She hummed it while she cooked dinner. Every night for 47 years. Catherine's voice filled the room once again, this time with the haunting melody of Moon River, the classic song that spoke of dreams and journeys, and the beauty of sharing life's adventures with someone you love. Her voice was clear and true, carrying emotions that seemed to reach directly into Harold's heart and awaken memories that the disease could not entirely erase. As she sang, Harold closed his eyes and smiled, his lips moving silently, as he remembered his wife's voice joining his in perfect harmony. Thomas could see his father's hands moving slightly, as if he were conducting an invisible orchestra, or perhaps reaching out to hold Eleanor's hand one more time. When the song ended, Harold opened his eyes and looked directly at Catherine with complete lucidity. "Thank you," he said simply. "You sing just like Eleanor did. She would have liked you very much. I wish I could have met her." Catherine replied honestly. She must have been an extraordinary woman to inspire such love. "She was," Harold agreed. "She taught English at the high school, you know. For 30 years. She believed that every student had something important to say. They just needed someone to help them find the words." Thomas's breath caught as he listened to his father share memories that he had not spoken about in months. Eleanor's teaching career had been a source of great pride for Harold, and he had often said that she had influenced more young lives than he had ever reached in his university classroom. "That sounds like someone who understood the power of encouragement," Catherine observed. "I think teaching and nursing have a lot in common. We both try to help people discover their own strength." "Yes," Harold said emphatically. "That's exactly what she did. And that's what you do too, isn't it? You help people remember who they are, even when they've forgotten." Catherine was quiet for a moment, moved by Harold's insight and the clarity with which he understood her role in his life. "I try to," she admitted. "I believe that every person has dignity and worth, no matter what challenges they're facing. Eleanor would say that kindness is the most important thing," Harold continued. "Shh. She always said that being smart or successful doesn't matter if you're not kind to people." Thomas felt these words hit him like a physical blow. His mother had indeed believed deeply in the importance of kindness, a value she had tried to instill in him throughout his childhood. But somewhere along the way, in his drive to achieve financial success and professional recognition, he had lost sight of the simple wisdom she had tried to teach him. Watching Catherine with his father, Thomas saw kindness in action. He saw someone who had chosen a profession that required her to give emotionally as well as physically, to see dignity in people that others might dismiss or overlook. Her care for Harold went far beyond medical necessity. It was an expression of respect for his humanity and recognition of his intrinsic worth. "Mr. Whitman," Catherine said gently, noticing that Harold was beginning to look tired, "would you like to rest for a while? I can stay with you if you'd like. Would you hum?" Harold asked hopefully. "Just softly? It helps me sleep." "Of course," Catherine replied, adjusting his blanket and dimming the overhead lights. "Close your eyes and think about dancing with Eleanor." As Catherine began to hum, "The way you look tonight." Softly, Harold's breathing gradually deepened and his face relaxed into an expression of peaceful contentment. Thomas watched in amazement as this young woman's simple act of kindness transformed his father's anxiety into tranquility. her voice serving as a bridge between the present moment and cherished memories of love and happiness. When Harold had settled into sleep, Catherine quietly gathered his afternoon medications and made notes in his chart, her movements efficient but unhurried. Thomas realized that she was planning to leave the room, without ever knowing that Harold's son had witnessed her extraordinary compassion. "Excuse me?" Thomas said softly, stepping into the room for the first time. Catherine looked up, startled to see someone she didn't recognize. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, mindful of not waking Harold. "Are you here to visit Mr. Whitman?" "I'm Thomas," he replied, extending his hand. "Harold is my father." Catherine's face lit up with recognition and pleasure. "Mr. Whitman, your father talks about you all the time. He's so proud of you and your business success." Thomas felt a pang of guilt, knowing that his visits had become perfunctory rather than meaningful, focused more on duty than genuine connection. I saw you singing with him," he admitted. "I didn't want to interrupt. I've never seen him so peaceful and happy. Music seems to reach a part of his mind that the disease hasn't touched." Catherine explained. "When he sings, especially the old songs he shared with your mother, he becomes completely himself again." "How do you know about my mother?" Thomas asked, curious about how much Catherine had learned about his family. "He talks about her constantly," Catherine said with a gentle smile. "Eleanor this, Eleanor that. The way he describes her, she must have been an amazing woman." "She was," Thomas agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "They were married for 47 years. When she died, it broke something in him. And then when the Alzheimer's started—" "I'm sorry for your loss," Catherine said sincerely. "It must be incredibly difficult to watch him struggle with the disease." Thomas nodded, surprised by how easily this conversation was flowing. "It is. Some days he doesn't remember who I am. Other days he asks where she is, and I have to tell him again that she's gone. I never know which is harder. The days when he doesn't remember are probably easier on him," Catherine observed gently. "The confusion is frustrating, but forgetting Eleanor means he doesn't have to experience losing her over and over again." The wisdom in her words struck Thomas profoundly. He had been so focused on his own grief over losing his father's recognition that he had not considered that Harold's forgetfulness might sometimes be a mercy, protecting him from the constant pain of fresh loss. "I never thought of it that way," Thomas admitted. "I've been so focused on what the disease is taking from him that I haven't thought about what it might be protecting him from." Catherine sat down in the chair beside Harold's bed, gesturing for Thomas to take the other chair. "Your father is a remarkable man," she said quietly. "Even with all the confusion and memory loss, his essential kindness and gentleness shine through. The disease hasn't touched the most important parts of who he is." "You see that?" Thomas asked, amazed that someone who had known Harold for less than a year could recognize qualities that Thomas sometimes struggled to remember. "Of course I see it," Catherine replied. "It's impossible to miss. He's concerned about other patients. He always says please and thank you, and he lights up when he talks about the people he loves. The Alzheimer's has affected his memory and his ability to process information, but it hasn't changed his heart." Thomas looked at his sleeping father with new eyes, trying to see him through Catherine's perspective. "I used to think the man I knew was disappearing," he said slowly. "But you're suggesting that he's still there, just harder to reach." "Exactly," Catherine confirmed. "He's like a radio that's not quite tuned to the right frequency. Sometimes the signal comes through clear and strong, like when he was singing today. Other times there's static and interference. But the essential Harold is always there, broadcasting on his own wavelength." This metaphor resonated deeply with Thomas, offering him a new framework for understanding his father's condition. Instead of viewing each visit as a potential loss or disappointment. He could approach them as opportunities to find moments of connection, however brief or unexpected they might be. The singing, Thomas said thoughtfully. I had no idea music affected him so strongly. It's quite common with dementia patients, Catherine explained. Musical memory is stored in a different part of the brain than other types of memory. That's why people with advanced Alzheimer's can sometimes remember every word of a song they learned 60 years ago, even when they can't remember what they had for breakfast. And you learned this in nursing school? Thomas asked. Catherine shook her head. Some of it, yes. But mostly I learned it from patients like your father, and from my grandmother who raised me. She had dementia in her final years, and I discovered that singing with her was the best way to connect when words failed. I'm sorry, Thomas said. That must have been difficult. It was, Catherine acknowledged. But it also taught me that love finds a way to communicate, even when traditional methods don't work anymore. Grandma couldn't remember my name toward the end, but when I sang her favorite hymns, she would squeeze my hand and smile. The love was still there, just expressed differently. Thomas found himself studying this young woman who spoke with such wisdom about loss and love, who had chosen to dedicate her career to caring for people in their most vulnerable moments. Can I ask you something personal? He said. Of course. Why do you do this work? I mean, it must be emotionally exhausting, watching people struggle with memory loss and decline. And the pay can't be excellent. Catherine finished with a laugh. No, it's definitely not excellent. But I can't imagine doing anything else. Why? Catherine was quiet for a moment, formulating her thoughts. Because every person deserves to be seen and valued for who they are, not judged by what they can or can't do. Your father was a literature professor who touched hundreds of lives. A devoted husband who loved his wife deeply. A father who raised a successful son. Those accomplishments don't disappear because he now needs help remembering where the bathroom is. Her words hit Thomas with unexpected force, highlighting the disconnect between his business world values and the deeper truths about human worth that Catherine understood intuitively. In his professional life, people were valued for their current productivity and potential future contributions. Catherine was operating from an entirely different value system, one that recognized inherent dignity regardless of capacity or performance. You make it sound simple, Thomas said, but I imagine it's incredibly challenging work. It is challenging, Catherine agreed, but it's also incredibly rewarding. When Mr. Whitman remembers a story about your mother, and his whole face lights up. When he sings along to an old song and becomes completely present, those moments are precious beyond description. I used to get frustrated when he would repeat the same stories. Thomas admitted with shame. I would think, I've heard this 20 times already. But for him, it might be the first time he's remembered that story in weeks, Catherine pointed out gently. Each telling is a victory, a moment when his mind successfully retrieved something important from the depths of his memory. Thomas felt a profound shift in his understanding of his father's condition and his own role as a son. I've been approaching this all wrong, haven't I? There's no right or wrong way to deal with something this difficult, Catherine assured him. But maybe there are ways to make the journey a little easier for both of you. Like singing? Thomas asked. Like singing, yes? Or looking through old photo albums? Sharing stories about your mother? Talking about his teaching career? Anything that connects him to positive memories and reinforces his sense of identity. Thomas realized that he had been so focused on the practical aspects of his father's care, ensuring he was safe, clean, and medically stable, that he had neglected the emotional and spiritual needs that Catherine was addressing so naturally. I don't think I know any of the songs he likes, Thomas confessed. He and my mother shared that interest, but I was always too busy with school, and then work to pay attention to their music. It's never too late to learn, Catherine said encouragingly. I could write down the titles of his favorites, or better yet, you could ask him about them. He loves talking about the songs he and your mother enjoyed together. As they talked, Harold stirred slightly in his sleep, a peaceful smile crossing his face, as if he were still hearing Catherine's voice in his dreams. Thomas found himself looking at his father with new appreciation, seeing not just an elderly man diminished by disease, but a person whose capacity for love and joy remained intact despite the challenges he faced. Catherine, Thomas said impulsively, I want to do something for you. For what you've done for my father? That's very kind, Catherine replied, but it's not necessary. Caring for your father is my job, and honestly, it's been my pleasure. He's one of my favorite patients. It may be your job, Thomas insisted, but what I witnessed today went far beyond professional obligation. You treated him with love and respect that transformed his entire afternoon. That's not something you can put a price on. Catherine was clearly uncomfortable with the praise, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment. I just try to treat people the way I would want my grandmother to be treated. It's nothing special. It's everything special, Thomas corrected her. In my world, people are valued for what they can produce, what they can contribute to the bottom line. But you value people for who they are, regardless of what they can give back. That's something I had forgotten was possible. Thomas paused, gathering his thoughts. I'd like to offer you a scholarship, he said suddenly. If you ever want to pursue additional education, advance your nursing career, maybe specialize in geriatric care or music therapy. No strings attached, just recognition of the extraordinary work you're doing. Catherine stared at him in shock. Mr. Whitman, that's incredibly generous, but I couldn't possibly accept something like that. Why not? Thomas asked. You've given my father something priceless. Moments of joy and peace in the midst of a devastating disease. You've reminded me what it means to treat people with dignity and compassion. If anything, I'm the one who's in your debt. But I don't need payment for doing what's right, Catherine protested. Taking care of people isn't a transaction. It's just being human. Her response only reinforced Thomas's conviction that Catherine was exactly the kind of person who deserved support and recognition. It's not payment, he clarified. It's investment in someone who clearly has the wisdom and compassion to make a real difference in the world. Harold stirred again, his eyes opening slowly as he emerged from his peaceful nap. Catherine, he said softly, his voice carrying the confusion that often accompanied his transitions between sleep and wakefulness. I'm here, Mr. Whitman. Catherine responded immediately, moving to his bedside and taking his hand. You had a nice rest. Do you remember we were singing together? Harold's face brightened as the memory returned. Eleanor's song, he said with satisfaction. We sang Eleanor's song. We did, Catherine confirmed. And your son Thomas is here to visit with you. Harold turned his head toward Thomas, and for a moment, his expression was uncertain. Then recognition dawned, and he smiled with genuine pleasure. You came to see me? Thomas felt his heart swell at his father's use of his childhood nickname, a term of endearment he hadn't heard in years. Hi, Dad. I heard you and Catherine singing. It sounded beautiful. She has a lovely voice, Harold said with pride, as if Catherine were his own daughter. Just like Eleanor. Did you know Eleanor used to sing while she cooked? Every night for 47 years. I remember, Thomas said gently, settling into the chair beside his father's bed. She had a beautiful voice too. Would you like me to sing something else, Mr. Whitman? Catherine offered. Maybe something you and Thomas could enjoy together. Harold's eyes lit up with excitement. Do you know, you are my sunshine. I used to sing that to Tommy when he was little." Catherine began to sing the familiar children's song, her voice warm and inviting. To Thomas's surprise, his father immediately joined in, his voice strong and clear, as he remembered every word of the lullaby he had sung to his son decades earlier. And then, without fully realizing what he was doing, Thomas found himself singing along, his adult voice harmonizing with his father's in a way that created an unexpected moment of profound connection. As they sang together, Thomas felt years of emotional distance dissolving. The song transported him back to childhood evenings, when his father would sit on the edge of his bed, singing softly until Thomas drifted off to sleep. Those moments had been precious then, though Thomas had forgotten their value in the complexity of adult life and the demands of his career. When the song ended, Harold looked at Thomas with eyes that sparkled with joy and complete recognition. "That was wonderful, Tommy. We should sing together more often." "I'd like that, Dad," Thomas replied, surprised by how much he meant it. "Maybe Catherine could teach me some of your other favorite songs."
"Yes!"
Harold exclaimed. "Catherine knows all the best songs. She's very smart, you know. Just like Eleanor." Thomas glanced at Catherine, who was watching the interaction between father and son with obvious pleasure. Her presence had not only brought comfort to Harold, but had also created a bridge that allowed Thomas to reconnect with his father in a way that transcended the barriers created by Alzheimer's disease. Over the following hour, the three of them shared stories and songs, with Catherine expertly guiding the conversation toward topics that engaged Harold's memory and brought moments of clarity. Thomas learned more about his father's inner world in that single afternoon than he had discovered in months of previous visits. When it was time for Thomas to leave, Harold was alert and happy, his earlier agitation completely forgotten. As Thomas prepared to say goodbye, his father reached for his hand with surprising strength. "Tommy," Harold said with perfect clarity, "I want you to know that I'm proud of you. You've become a good man, just like your mother always said you would." Thomas felt tears threaten as he squeezed his father's hand. "Thank you, Dad. I love you." "I love you too, son," Harold replied. "Come back soon and bring your singing voice with you." Outside Harold's room, Thomas lingered to speak with Catherine privately. "I meant what I said about the scholarship," he told her. "But more than that, I want you to know that you've given me something invaluable today."
"What's that?"
Catherine asked. "You've given me my father back," Thomas said simply. "Not the way he was, but the way he is now. You've shown me how to see him through different eyes, how to value the moments of connection instead of mourning what's been lost." Catherine smiled, her eyes warm with understanding. "He's lucky to have a son who cares enough to learn. Not everyone takes the time to understand what their loved ones need." "I almost didn't," Thomas admitted. "I was so focused on my own grief over losing the father, I remembered that I wasn't seeing the father who's still here. You changed that for me." As Thomas drove home that evening, he found himself humming, "You Are My Sunshine," his mind filled with plans for his next visit with his father. He would bring a collection of Harold's favorite songs, perhaps some old photo albums that might trigger positive memories. Most importantly, he would bring a new understanding of what it meant to love someone not for who they used to be, but for who they were right now. The next week, Thomas arrived at Harmony Care Center, carrying a small CD player and a collection of music from his parents' era. He found Catherine helping Harold with his afternoon snack, the two of them laughing over something Harold had said about the applesauce. "Tommy," Harold exclaimed when he saw his son. "Did you come to sing with us?" "I did, Dad," Thomas replied, setting up the CD player beside Harold's bed. "I brought some of your favorite songs." As the familiar melodies of their chosen music filled the room, Thomas, Harold, and Catherine spent the afternoon sharing songs, stories, and moments of pure joy. Harold's face was radiant with happiness. Catherine's expertise in connecting with dementia patients created bridges to precious memories, and Thomas discovered that love could indeed find new ways to express itself, even in the face of devastating loss. 3 months later, Catherine received an unexpected phone call from Thomas. He was offering her not just a scholarship, but a position as director of music therapy at a new memory care facility he was funding, inspired by the transformation he had witnessed in his father's quality of life. "I've learned that success means more than financial achievement," Thomas told her during their conversation. "It means using whatever resources you have to make life better for people who need support and care. You taught me that, and I want to help you teach others." Catherine accepted the position, understanding that this opportunity would allow her to expand her impact beyond individual patients to entire families struggling with dementia and memory loss. The Harold Whitman Memory Care Center, named in honor of Thomas's father, became a model for facilities across the country, emphasizing the importance of music, dignity, and human connection in caring for people with cognitive challenges. Harold lived for 2 more years, each day enriched by Catherine's continued presence and Thomas's regular visits filled with music and meaningful conversation. When he died peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by people who loved him, his final words were sung rather than spoken. A few bars of "The Way You Look Tonight," the song that had connected him to his beloved Eleanor, and had become the soundtrack of his relationship with the 2 people who had cared for him with such devotion. At Harold's memorial service, Catherine sang the songs that had brought him so much joy, while Thomas spoke about the lessons his father had taught him about the power of kindness, the importance of dignity, and the truth that love finds a way to bridge any gap that life creates. "My father taught me that wisdom isn't always about remembering," Thomas said to the gathered mourners. "Sometimes it's about forgetting the things that don't matter and holding on to the things that do." He forgot many things in his final years, but he never forgot how to love, how to appreciate beauty, and how to find joy in simple pleasures like singing with people who cared about him. The years later, Catherine would often think about Harold when she worked with new patients facing similar challenges. His example had taught her that even in the midst of devastating illness, the human spirit could find ways to shine through, especially when nurtured by compassion, respect, and the healing power of music. And Thomas, who had transformed his business model to focus on investments that created positive social impact, would always credit Harold and Catherine with teaching him the most important lesson of his life, that true wealth is measured not by what we accumulate, but by the love we give and the lives we touch along the way. The song that had brought them all together continued to play in their hearts long after Harold's voice had joined Eleanor's in whatever harmony awaited them beyond this life, a melody of love, loss, and redemption that would inspire countless others to listen more carefully to the music that connects us all.